What brings you in today? What spurs you coming in for counseling?
Well, I kept my, I like to do what I say I'm going to do, and so I made the appointment because my youngest daughter, she's quite insistent. She's also quite complicated. I mean, she's an artist and she's a little wacky, but that's okay. If maybe it just runs in the family. I don't know, but anyway, she said, "Dad, you really have to see a therapist because you're doing these bizarre things." And no, I'm not. But okay, well, maybe sometimes a little bit. But I said, okay, I'll do it. All right. And then I guess she called your office, and voila, that's here I am. Yeah.
Okay. So your daughter suggested maybe going to talk to somebody, and
Yes.
you mentioned the word bizarre, that she thought maybe some things that you had done were unexpected, or what do you think she means?
Well, I mean that I borrowed that. That's what she said.
Hmm.
That it was I was acting bizarrely, and well, I don't know. I mean, I was at this. I have this great beer called green beer. Have you heard of it?
No, I'm
No,
not.
it's not surprising because we haven't put it on the market yet, but we're going to, and it's going to be sensational. It's not like it's beer, but it's it's different. It's much better than beer, and it's green, and we're going to have the introduction on St. Patrick's Day. It's going to be fabulous. I mean, wow. So I had this little minor set to with some people at this convention. This I don't know what kind of convention it was. It was about beverages, I guess, some bullshit like that. But anyway, I said this woman came around, and she was I know this sounds bad, but she was fat, and she said, Mr. Mayberry, according to our records here, you haven't paid for this booth, and I said, oh yes, I have. I have paid for the booth. I was here yesterday. I paid for the booth. I paid for it. This is my booth. And she said, well, according to our record, I said, wait, stop a minute. I think you got the wrong record there because I paid. I paid in full. You want to see the receipt? She says, yeah, I would like to see the receipt. So I rifled my look. I didn't have it. I left it on my. I don't have it. I don't have the receipt. And one thing, and then they called security, and then I may have tripped over something and it fell down, or I know they say I kicked it. I don't know, but and then I was hauled off, and my beer got splashed and now it's in storage, and I don't know. I'm very upset about it. I don't know what's going to happen now.
I'm starting to notice several things about Paul, both in presentation and in the content of his reporting, that are striking. His speech is somewhat pressured. He's fidgety and a bit irritable. His initial response asking me how many questions I was going to ask was a bit unusual. The story he has just related had a few red flags. The green beer venture seems a bit unlikely and perhaps grandiose, but I'll wait to get more information before making any definitive judgment on that. However, his reporting of the confrontation with the staff and security and his ambiguity about whether he tripped or kicked the officer is noteworthy. All in all, I'm starting to wonder about a possible bipolar disorder, including any impairment in reality testing, which could also be indicative of a psychotic disorder.
As we saw in the interview, and I think you elucidated with some of the commentaries, there's certainly some of his behavior that seemed pressured, fidgety. Some of the things he described seemed grandiose, odd, eccentric. So certainly manic-like qualities. Uh, what makes you think he was, bipolar 1 versus bipolar 2, and what's the difference between the two of those? And might as well throw in cyclothymia while we're at it.
All right, let me see if I can do all that. So first, let's define what all these different terms. So bipolar 1, at its base, as we reviewed at the front of this, the only clear requirement is presence of at least one manic episode in a person's life. There's no requirement in there that the person must have also experienced a major depressive episode. But the research indicates and suggests that after experiencing a manic episode, there is a very high likelihood that eventually the person will also encounter a period of major depression. So that's bipolar 1, major depression and manic episode. Bipolar 2 is slightly different. Instead of a manic episode, we would be screening for hypomania, which is a period of abnormally elevated mood or irritability that may also be associated with high productivity. So often people won't describe discomfort during a hypomanic episode, and I personally have found those very hard to define, hard to ask somebody to go back in their history and have you ever had a period of time where you've been slightly irritable or more irritable than usual for several days and you were also highly productive? Doesn't really stand out for people as a period of distinct change in their life.
So that's different from a full-blown manic episode.
Correct. A full-blown manic episode, once you have worked with somebody or seen somebody in the midst of a manic episode, there's no mistaking it. It is highly intense, lasts for several days, a really decreased need or almost no need for sleep, may act very erratically, the pattern of speech is highly intense, etc. So,
and often it gets them into real trouble legally, as in this case, a minor legal skirmish, or people, go out and start a business or try to start a business like this gentleman and end up spending a lot of money, running up credit card debt, end up in a hospital.
Sure, end up in hospital, in jail, or sometimes engaging in activities that have a high likelihood for going poorly.